new kind of yoga claims to help take years off of your face. This is called face yoga.
I'm going to be trying out a trend that's taken social media by storm. Face yoga.
Welcome to your complete face lifting routine.
And then we are going to feel the cheek muscles lifting up.
Face yoga.
Facial yoga. Face yoga.
Face yoga.
Facial yoga.
So does facial yoga work? Is this a way to prevent the knife, the laser, the chemical peel? Is this going to be the answer to all skin and facial aging changes? The answer is inside this video. Take a look. Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Amir Karam, board certified facial plastic surgeon and founder and creator of Karam MD Skin. I specialize in facial rejuvenation, which basically means I help people look as young as they feel. We're going to talk about a very interesting and popular topic that has been coming up a lot, and a lot of people have been wondering and asking if this is something they should be incorporating into their skincare routines and their anti-aging routines, and that is facial yoga. You may have heard of it, you may have even tried it, but there's a lot to learn about it. There's a lot around it, and I know for me it was very enlightening to go through some of this and be able to advise my patients a little bit more through an educated lens, a little bit more background, so that we can all arrive at the right expectations and know what to do when it comes to choosing these different types of procedures for ourselves. All right, so without further ado, let's break it down. So what is facial yoga? So facial yoga is very similar in theory and principle to any other type of yoga. The kind of yoga that you're doing for your body is basically incorporated into the face, right? So does it sound logical, illogical? I don't know. We're gonna discover this together. Why do you do yoga in general? You do yoga in general because you want to improve flexibility, you want to improve strength, use a lot of different muscles, improve tone, improve blood flow, just a very, very time-tested, true form of exercise that's been around for thousands of years. Well, it turns out that facial yoga has also been around for thousands of years. And ancient Indian, Chinese, a lot of cultures have incorporated facial yoga as part of their practices. Let's take a look at how facial yoga is performed. Let's take a look at some poses, and let's take a look at some of the instruction around it. These are basically examples of different types of facial poses and different types of ways to perform facial yoga to achieve the benefits that I just described. Now, if you look at these carefully, you see that they're intricate. They're usually requiring a lot of mindfulness about how different parts of the face move together, and that's not always an easy task to do, because if you do it wrong, you could have some negative consequences that would be the opposite of what you're looking for. And I'm going to talk about that in just a second. So let's kind of go through a little bit about what are you doing? What's the principle behind it? So with facial yoga, the principle behind it is you're contracting, meaning like smiling, raising foreheads, or doing certain things. I was going to do some demonstrations of this, but I thought for sure if I did this, first of all, I would probably screw it up completely. I would do it wrong because it's not as easy as it looks. But I would also make you look at me very differently. You'd probably laugh every time you saw me doing a video for you. So I don't think you wanted me to go through those facial exercises and show them. But basically, in a nutshell, you're contracting your muscles, you're relaxing your muscles, you're stretching your muscles in the same way you do your body. And the net result will be that it should improve tone of the muscles. It should relax the muscles, take away tension, improve blood flow, and some have even gone as far as to say that it increases collagen stimulation. Now, I just want to separate one thing. There's facial exercises, which is basically what yoga is, and then there's things like gua sha and different types of things that you're basically taking, for example, a jade roller and rolling the face in certain motions. And the notion there is that by making some of these motions, you're basically doing like a lymphatic massage, right? So very different than contracting and trying to strengthen muscle. There you're trying to perhaps move impurities, move lymph nodes, improve blood supply by doing that. So I want to make sure you understand that those are two different concepts that we're discussing here. The question then becomes, there's a lot of different reasons why things have been incorporated. And I just mentioned, yoga has a lot of exercise related type benefits that we want to incorporate. But what about facial yoga? Is facial yoga really a way of either preventing, slowing down, or enhancing facial rejuvenation type procedures that we talk about? Is it also worthwhile to incorporate into our skincare routines? So some of the things that that you do as part of facial yoga is you recognize the fact that the face is made up of a lot of small facial muscles, right? You've got your frontalis that helps raise your brows. You've got your orbicularis that helps contract around your eyes. You've got your orbicularis oris, which helps with contraction around the mouth. You've got zygomaticus muscles that help you with smile, depressor angularis. All these, I won't go on and on with an anatomy lesson, but there's a lot of different muscles doing a lot of different things that help us animate and look right? And in the neck, the platysma muscle is what basically gives the neck the firmness and shape. Now, as you heard me talk about in other videos, really the underlying change that happens, what people perceive as aging, is basically split into two parts. There's facial aging that affects shape, and then there's skin aging that affects the skin, the cover of the entire face. And those are two separate things. They're completely separate things. The mechanisms involved are two totally different mechanisms. And what we find is that both of them are basically hitting I would say kind of like a convergence right around the late 40s, early 50s. That's when skin, generally speaking, shows signs of fine lines and wrinkles, discoloration, dryness, pores, all this stuff. That's skin, right? And then on the other hand, shape starts to really change, and that's where the face starts to droop, and you start to see, instead of this like V shape or oval shape and overall heart-shaped face, you start to see the face become more long and square as everything starts to kind of come down. That's happening at the level of the fascia. And we're trying to figure out where, facial yoga fits into this, because a lot of conversation about it has been that it affects, and improves skin. And then there's other conversation that it prevents or improves facial aging and shape things. So I've always had the message that skin is something that is addressed on your own, and shape, once things get lax, is something you address with surgery. Those are kind of like the cleanest ways to think about it. If facial yoga indeed does what some people tout it to do, then it's hitting on both sides of this, this coin, basically. It's improving skin and it's improving shape. Question is, does it actually do that? Let's break down just a little bit of the anatomy for a second. So number one, facial fascia, which actually incorporates and holds up the entire face, including all the facial muscles, because unlike, for example, your bicep muscle where it's attached on both ends to bone, well, facial muscle is attached to fascia. And fascia, as part of the aging process, some of it incorporates some of the muscle, some of it doesn't. The muscle of the neck, for example, the platysma, attaches to the fascia of the face. So as the face starts to come down, so does the neck muscle, and therefore you start to see sagging of the neck and the turkey waddle and the banding and all that other stuff. So the question is, can you, through strengthening these muscles, somehow impact the lengthening and aging and weakness of the fascia that causes all these things? So I'm going to give you my opinion about this at the end of the video. That's the approach that facial yoga is trying to take. So we said in ancient Egypt, India, and China, this was a part of the holistic health approach thousands of years ago. And anything that lives and survives over thousands of years as part of tradition, you got to give it some credibility, and you have to give it some weight. Because just like regular yoga and some of these other practices, if it didn't work, probably it would have died off, right? Like many other things that don't have an impact. We know yoga, for our bodies is really helpful and impactful. The thing is, though, I want to say, during my research and reading for this video, I didn't see anything in the historical descriptions about the practice of facial yoga having a direct link to anti-aging. This is important. It was for just facial health and holistic body health, and it was incorporated in the overall picture of things. But it wasn't like 2,000 years ago or whatever, they're saying, hey, we're going to do this so we don't get jowls, or that our skin continues to look vibrant and beautiful. The reason I say that, first of all, you got to remember life expectancy back then was very, very short. In fact, even in the US, prior to the advent of penicillin, life expectancy was like in the 30s and 40s, even in industrial, advanced countries. So the idea that, the large segment of the population was living for long periods of time to care about facial aging the way we care now, when life expectancy is like in the high 70s, and majority of the people are making it to a point where they're seeing their faces age, and suddenly, not looking as young as you feel is like a big deal, because, we want to look our best and fundamentally look the way we feel on the inside, healthy, etc. I have a hard time believing that it was used for anti-aging. And I think that's an important point. Like everything else, there's a lot of different ideas about how to use certain things, and recently it's been sort of brought into the fold of the facial anti-aging or skin anti-aging category, which I'm gonna reserve my judgment until the end, but I'm gonna just leave you with that thought for a second, that I don't know if that was the original intention back in the origins of facial yoga and some of these other practices. All right, so does it work? In order to establish whether something works for the things that we're looking for, the expectation is ultimately that it's going to have a positive impact, a slowdown effect, or a reversal effect on skin or facial aging. These are all kind of like the expectations of such a endeavor. If it's going to be worth our time and energy to go learn this and practice it, then we're hoping we're going to get some direct benefit from it when it comes to anti-aging. Well, the truth of the matter is there's essentially no scientific study or research that supports it. And I'm not surprised. And I know what you're thinking. Oh, well, there's no money in it. There's no one, what pharmaceutical company is going to go out and do a study on this, and who's going to fund it? Aside from that, yeah, that's probably true. That holds true for a lot of things. The other aspect of it is, how are you going to design a study around this? What are you going to have an entire cohort of people literally doing nothing for anti-aging purposes, getting the same amount of sun exposure, eating the same types of food, putting on the same types of moisturizer, and the only thing that they're doing differently is whether they're doing facial yoga or not, and then following them for a 10-year period? That's the kind of study you literally have to do to be able to see if it makes a true impact on facial aging type changes. I don't know if that will ever happen. It really seems like a very difficult thing, because it's not like when we test, for example, an active skincare ingredient, we can study it for a 4 or 8 week period, do studies that are measuring the depth of a wrinkle, measuring the moisture of the skin, etc. And if it's a change that's greater than what would have happened just sort of like by chance, then you can say that's statistically significant, and therefore the variable of the skincare active ingredient like retinol or vitamin C or niacinamide or whatever it was that we're testing is the reason why this change happened. Can't really do that with this. There's just too many variables, too many differences between different people's biology and natural facial aging process, and years of lifestyle before they ever started this. So let's just say at the moment there's nothing to support it, and likely there won't be. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't incorporate it into your routine. If, at the conclusion of all this and through your own study and research, you end up finding that, there's less harm than good, and you have the time and energy to do it, you're going to come to a conclusion. Now, again, I'll give you my synopsis about it in the end, but I certainly haven't seen anything that would be like a glaring red flag towards this. And trust me, I've given every opportunity to point out red flags and, things like radiofrequency, microneedling, and all that other stuff, therapy, all that stuff that has actually negative consequences in addition to, time and money, but also some physical consequences. I'm not seeing anything like that here. However, this point is something to keep in mind. When we raise our foreheads over and over again, we squint, do this type of thing, or make this little frowning gesture. The idea is that every time the skin bounces against itself, like it forms this crease, and as we age, the skin loses elasticity and collagen and becomes thinner with age. That repetitive movement leads to what's called a static wrinkle. The difference between a static and dynamic wrinkle is that a dynamic wrinkle is there when you are expressing, and then it goes away when you stop. Like you lift your forehead muscle, right? You lift this and then you stop and then the line goes away. That's a dynamic wrinkle. Nothing wrong with that. It's just part of, human expression. what you're trying to prevent, for example, with things like Botox, is prevent the evolution of a dynamic wrinkle from turning into a static wrinkle, which static wrinkle is there even when you're not expressing. So here's the caveats to this. So as I mentioned, I tried looking at some of the stuff. I was going to do some demonstrations for you and try to, emulate this. But as I was trying and practicing some of those things, I realized that I was actually doing it, it was harder to do than I thought. And I was, for example, one pose was to look up with your mouth open, look up, and don't express your forehead muscle. Don't keep it relaxed. Well, I couldn't do that. Every time I would go up, look up, I would end up creasing my forehead muscle. So the notion and the concept is, and this is one of the warnings about this whole thing, is if you're going through this and you're doing it perhaps maybe the wrong way, and or even if you're doing it semi the right way, keep your mind out and watch out for where your face is creasing during these exercises, because if you're doing it repetitively and these areas crease, you're gonna form a static line. You're gonna form lines and wrinkles if you do it for long enough years, I'm talking. That's not gonna happen if you just do it for a few months or whatever, but that's the potential danger in it. And that's not a huge danger. I mean, you get a few wrinkles, big deal. It would probably bum you out that you're doing this to avoid wrinkles, but then you get some, but it's not like the end of the world. None of this related to this topic is the end of the world, but the other aspect of it is the opportunity cost. See, when you decide to do one thing, it usually comes at the price of not doing another thing. Now, you have to pick and choose the things you're going to do with your time and your energy that are going to have the greatest impact. You look at all these cultures that we just discussed that advocate for it and do it as part of it, like Korea, China, India, etc. As I mentioned earlier, they're doing it as part of a holistic approach. Nowhere did I find that somebody is doing facial yoga as their principal and primary skin care routine. Simply doesn't exist. I had not seen this. Other than, like I said, a cohort of people who are advocating for this, but I'm talking about traditional, or origin forward type of practices. What you're finding is, for example, let's just take Korean culture, for example. They're very, very big on preventing skin aging, right? Korean skincare concepts have become very forward thinking. And I agree with anything that's preventative. But here's the thing that they do and they advocate for. Hardcore sun protection, right? I mean, you hear me talk about it all the time. The sun is like 70-80% of your aging changes. So they're good with sun protection, believe me. They're great with skincare. They use active skincare. They use, the actives that we talk about here, like the retinols and the vitamin C's and all these other, hyaluronic acids and peptides. They use them as part of a routine that is incorporated into their skin their whole life. I mean, for me, this was really what prompted me. This whole notion of long-term active use was the whole reason behind the trifecta, for example, to make it easy enough and thoughtless enough so most people can just simply do it. Korean skincare and Korean culture advocating for preventative skin, from an aging point of view, are big on this. They're also very big on diet, hydration, moisture, sleep, all the things that improve skin anti-aging and skin health in general. They're advocating for it, and they're doing it as part of their skincare routine. And then on top of that, perhaps they throw some gua sha on top of it, or perhaps they do some facial yoga if want to. But it's not like facial yoga is here and all these other things are here and someone's picking and choosing between those two. It would be incorporated into an overall, just a general routine. And in India, for example, this type of thing would be incorporated into the overall traditional, medicine approach that would incorporate some facial yoga, some body yoga, some acupuncture, a multitude of other things, including diet and other health-related things, all of which kind of go into the fold of holistic. But again, in this particular example, it's not specifically talking about anti-aging or skin aging changes, but just as a all-around part of meditation and mindfulness and relaxation and stress and all the things that are good for us in general. So I think in a nutshell, when you look at this, if you're going to put it in the kind of the right place, it would fit into a holistic approach, and one that if you choose to add an enhancement on top of your usual, which I'm going to discuss in a moment about what I think is like the ideal kind of an overall approach. But just one warning sign, I'm going to repeat it again. Even if you're doing it right and you're doing it too often and you're getting a lot of expression and over and over and over again specific areas, you do run the risk a little bit of, actually creating some wrinkles, etc., that type of thing. So just keep that peace of mind. Watch yourself as you're doing it and see where these lines are happening, and recognize that, if you're too repetitive with it over time, those lines will end up creating a little bit of a crease where they're folding. All right, so let's summarize now, and let me give you my feeling about the overall thing. So when it comes to facial yoga, I don't know if I personally would incorporate it into my life. I don't think so. And I don't think I would advocate it necessarily for others to do, because I'm a little bit lazy. I'm gonna tell you this, and I don't obsess about facial aging. I don't obsess about, skin aging. I wanna do the most I can do with the least amount of effort and energy. That's my philosophy. That is truly, I think, subconsciously what drove me, frankly, to develop the skincare trifecta that I developed, was because prior to that, I literally didn't do anything, even though I knew better, right? I literally knew better. So for me, a couple minutes a day, put all those actives on, be good with my sun protection, and cleanse my face morning and night, and put these things on, is about a 3 or 4 minute thing. For me to sit in front of a mirror, go through the steps to learn how to do this and do it and all this kind of stuff, there's just not enough evidence to show that that would be worth my time. Okay, that's my honest thing. Now, you may be different. You may enjoy the process. You may find it peaceful. You might find it enjoyable. Learn it, study it, do it. All of that, more power to you. I don't see any major issues with it at all. I just can't get behind it and say, this is the panacea. This is gonna be worth your time. Go out and go get this, learn this the way it should be, learn and watch all the YouTube videos on it, or go get an instructor or something. I can't do that with good conscience, say that this is really, the conclusion that I came up with. So if that makes sense to you, then you have your answer. At the end of the day, good news is literally no harm. It's not gonna cost you anything, unless of course you get like a private facial yoga coach, and that could, I don't know if there is such a thing and how much they would charge you, but it could definitely, rack up some bills there. But generally speaking, there's enough information out there that you could probably learn this stuff on your own and include it into your routine. But please, 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 don't do it in place of the tried and the true, time-tested approach of sun protection, active skincare that will literally make your skin look better and better. And I tell you, when you combine the right things and you're consistent with it, and remember this is the key point, consistency, because even if you're gonna do yoga, you better be consistent with it, because a few weeks or months of yoga is not gonna do anything, just like a few weeks or months of skincare and sun protection aren't gonna do anything. If you're committed to seeing changes in your skin and truly preventing and defying aging, then you need to basically recognize that you have control in this and take accountability and have the commitment, because if you do the right things, just like I mentioned with the Korean philosophies and the Korean approaches, prevention, restoration, all can happen, but it's in your control. It really is when it comes to skin. And it starts with the top two things that I talked about, sun protection and skincare. And then there's a number of other things below that, like lasers and microneedling and chemical peels and facial yoga and gua sha and some of these other aspects. All right, folks, I hope that puts it all into perspective. Curious what your thoughts are, so make sure you drop a comment below. Let me know your thoughts and whether you agree, disagree, or found this useful. I'd love to hear. If you enjoyed it, like it, share it with some friends and family. Let's get some conversation and word around this. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can get this on a weekly basis. All right, folks, it was a pleasure. Until next time, Dr. Amir Karam.